Welcome in for another edition of NewOrleans.Football. As always, NewOrleans.Football is presented by PJ's Coffee, the best coffee shop in the land. They're getting ready to switch some things on their menu, so make sure you go in there to check out all the new stuff. And if you're in need of a new ride, make sure you check out Matt Bauer's Auto Group. They have the Ford dealership in Metairie on Veterans Memorial Boulevard, right next to our studio, and right under our studio, they have the new pre-owned center. So make sure you go in there, talk to the guys, and make sure you're riding clean. Mike, night one is in the books. The Saints, they took Kelvin Banks. Now it's the time. I really feel like that second and third round is where you fill out the players who are going to be a part of your team for a good minute, or actually should be a part of your team for a good minute. So, the football in the room. Let's talk about the
The football
position.
in the room,
The
the
football in
elephant-sized
the
football in the
yeah.
room.
Yes, the football in the room. Quarterback. The Saints missed on a quarterback last night. There was thoughts that they were going to trade back in like the New York Giants did and get a quarterback.
Mhm.
One of the quarterbacks that they were, quote unquote touted to get, Jackson Dart, off the board. So with the remaining names on the board, is tonight the night that the quarterbacks that the Saints draft a quarterback?
I think, yeah, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think it'd be a surprise if they don't tonight. Now, so they have picks 40, 71, 93, I believe. One early fourth. They're eighth on the board tonight. And then two third rounders. Obviously, you can't count on anybody falling to the third round. You're getting into that next wave of quarterbacks. If you do that, you're just taking your shot on your Spencer Rattler, your Jake Haener at that point. So 40. We're looking at 40. Are we looking at moving up from 40, honestly,
Yeah.
if they really want to get it? Because it feels like everybody's kind of sitting back and watching each other,
Yeah.
No, I thought when the Giants struck last night, we might see it then. Like, all right, everybody's been waiting. Now it's time to go, and they didn't do that. Look, Cleveland, I believe, has 33 and 36 tonight after that ridiculous trade that the Jaguars made yesterday. No offense to Travis Hunter, I think he's going to be a special player. If the Saints ended up with Travis Hunter, the fan base would be so enthused. But man, oh man, did they give up a lot to get him? So Cleveland gets to go twice. They need a quarterback. Anyone else might be a move up the board. I'm not sure who, if you're sure another team's going to take a quarterback, but
I think
it's
Pittsburgh
go time.
has to.
Yeah.
I think Pittsburgh and Cleveland and the Saints are three teams that kind of have to take a quarterback just because who plays, you know what I mean? And if Rattler gets hurt, then really, not wishing that on him at all. But the eventuality is it's on the table now since he's projected to be the starter. Then what? We'll talk more about the Carr thing yesterday. They tried to. We'll talk about it more
Yeah,
later.
we'll talk about
But
Carr in a later segment. But,
yeah,
I mean, I'm just looking at the people ahead of the Saints currently. There's somebody else would have to move ahead of the Saints, I think, other than Cleveland. So, I mean, look, there's two big names still on the board. There's more than two big names still on the board, but for our purposes, Shedeur Sanders, who we heard pretty good information, obviously, that the Saints didn't want to take him at 9, and the whole league passed on him in round 1. So does that change the Saints' viewpoint of him? Or Tyler Shuck, the guy we've been targeting all along from Louisville, is still there, and probably the best bet. We're going to be prepared for the Saints to draft Tyler Shuck tonight. We've been prepared for that, and now the value matches. Like, look. Shuck is interesting because he's been all over the board. Some people had him in the 90s. It feels like the reporting caught up to Tyler Shuck late. Once the national reporters started talking to teams, once NOF and Nick started talking to all the sources he had, it was like, pay attention to this guy. There were reports of him being number 1 on some team's board. I had a Cam Ward. So Tyler Shuck this is absolutely the spot now for him to potentially go, as well as Shedeur Sanders. And then you got Jalen Milroe hanging back there. You got Quinn Ewers. So quarterbacks, this is going to be a big night for quarterbacks, I think. But the Saints have a chance to get their guy. And up until this point, they did not have to move into the 20s to do it. I mean, we saw what Atlanta had to do to get it to 26.
They messed up the price of the brick, man.
Next year's first. Next year's first. Thank goodness the Saints didn't have to do that. And if they made calls, and if they were trying to get into round 1 last night, and if a team said, yep, you can get, come on in, Give
Right.
us pick 40 and next year's first. I'm glad the Saints said thanks, but no thanks. So if they love a quarterback, if they tried to get into round one to get him and decided the price was too high, well, I love what's still on the board for them. Obviously, Jackson Dart's gone, but he's the only one that's gone right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you talk about the scenario if they would have traded back in with the reaction from the Banks pick, which I think is a good pick, but just the way people were so polarized off of that. And then if they would have, I don't think they would have done what Atlanta did in like completely messing up the order of operations when trading. Like you put in your first pick for next year. That's wow, but that's their problem. Um, that for somebody like Jackson, unless and we've said this the entire time, unless he felt fully compelled, and they didn't feel fully compelled to go with that first round pick on any of those quarterbacks. So I think now is the time to go in and get whoever you want. Now it's really feeling like it's Tyler Shuck, but even if it is Shadur Sanders, I don't see him continuing the slide. I think that
Yeah.
Cleveland needs to take him. If they don't, then they're just going to continue to be the Browns, I guess. But I definitely think that it's time to take a quarterback. And then
Yeah.
when that individual is in the building, now that individual is competing for the starting job.
No question. Yeah, look, anybody you get tonight, if you do wait till round three, if it ends up being, I mean, really, it could be at 40, except for what we think. We think the order is for the Saints. We think Shuck, but I mean, top 10, 20 picks tonight. I wouldn't be shocked to see Milrow. There's other names that are going to come as the day goes on, or as the night goes on.
Yeah.
I think we could see Ewers come off the board. I think we could see. I don't know. It gets a little murkier than the Ohio State quarterback, the Syracuse quarterback, but I think we're going to see quarterbacks go off the board. But even if the Saints take one at 93, they're competing for the starting job,
Yeah.
depending on Derek Carr's health. So at any time tonight. But obviously, if they want to get the guy they want, and if there's a guy they're like, we envision this guy being our starter, 40 is go time.
So under just best player available under Shadur and Tyler Shuck, do you have Ewers over Milrow or Milrow over Ewers?
It doesn't matter who I have. Who do I think the Saints have? I really don't know. I mean, Milrow is really interesting to me because you have a Milrow plan if you draft Milrow. I think,
Yeah.
and I would be very excited if the Saints had a Milrow plan. Like if the Saints took Milrow at 40, after they just took an offensive lineman in round one, then you'd start to be like, all right, what's going on here? Could this be interesting? Even though I think that would be a very polarizing pick. There, especially SEC fans down here, I think have a this is not a gamer type of.
They know who he is.
They're not looking at what he could be. They're looking at what the warts that he's shown at times.
Yeah.
And then I mean Ewers, Will Howard, Kyle McCord. I think that those will be the guys that could all potentially go tonight. I would say, but I think Sanders and Shuck are sort of in a class of their own. Of all right, the team thinks this guy can come in and start. But Shuck would be polarizing too. I think Sanders probably the only one. Maybe he'd be a little polarizing, but not at 40. The good thing is we're talking about 40 now.
Right.
So the idea of polarizing, the idea of setting yourself back, mortgaging your future, like I think that's already off the board. If you're a team without a quarterback, take your chances now. Go ahead and I'm not even exaggerating when I say the Saints could use the 40th pick on a quarterback every year until they find one now, and I wouldn't complain about it because that position's so important.
Yeah. So we talked about the teams who are also desperate for a quarterback. If the Pittsburgh Steelers find out that the Saints want to, just for sake of talking, take Tyler Shuck, how aggressive should the Saints get in making sure that doesn't happen?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind the price. I would kind of hate to see it cost 93 at this point, but I actually don't think it would cost 93 at this point, which is their late third round pick. If they want to give up one of their 2 fourth-rounders to move up and just be sure they've got the guy, that wouldn't bother me too much. But I'm not that worried about the Pittsburgh Steelers because they had their chance. They were picking 21st. And they also could have moved into round one. I mean, if they were content, and look at the team that's picking 33 and 36. That's a rival, the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah.
If the Steelers really had a guy that they had to have, I think they would have moved ahead of the Browns.
Yeah. No, I think so too. Because like I was just waiting for them to walk up and say Shadur Sanders, but they ended
Yeah.
up saying the defensive player, and
Which,
I was like, "Oh, okay."
probably means Aaron Rodgers is going
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, forgot that he was even on the board. It's
Sure.
just so up in the wind with him on everything. But that segment was presented by Aaron Rose, and now it's time to get into our next segment presented by Bobby Hebert's Cajun Cannon Seafood Restaurant and Bar. Banks,
Yeah.
the Saints select Banks. It was mocked, and some of our guys took him. We've talked about him throughout the last couple of months. Nick, he had an offensive lineman being taken. It was Connerly, but still, it was in the right position. What do you think about the
And
pick, man?
Nick was on Banks high too. I mean, I think
Yeah,
part of the reason Nick, not to put words in his mouth. I mean, you guys talked about it in the live stream last night, and people should go back and listen to that. It was a great way to cover the draft. I was listening to you guys the whole time while I was in the quote unquote other war room. Got to join you for a little while, but
yeah,
I think Nick would have taken Banks too, and as the pick was coming up and Banks was still on the board, that was Nick's pick too. So to be fair to him, I think part of the reason he guessed Connerly is because there started to be a ton of buzz that Banks was going to go 6 or 7.
yeah,
I think if the Saints really wanted an offensive tackle, this draft played in their favor as soon as Jacksonville made that like bonkers trade to move
yeah.
up 3 picks. I think I saw someone say they gave up so much value in that it was the equivalent of giving up the 8th pick in the draft. Like they lost like 2,000 points on the trade chart or some. Like they moved up from 5 to 2, and they gave up next year's first and this year's 35th pick or whatever it was, just in 34th pick.
Do you see Travis playing both sides of the ball? Because
Yeah.
okay,
Look. I just can't believe it cost that much. I
no,
can't.
yeah, no, the cost I understand that, but I'm
Great,
saying
great. Like if you can put that aside and worry about the fact that they don't have a first round pick next year,
right.
that team's gonna be excited to have Travis Hunter coming into the building and giving them something to be excited about. No doubt about it.
Yeah, but back to Banks, I really think that he's kind of what the Saints need. You know what I mean? They have a lot of needs, and he was the guy. I felt I wasn't surprised. I wasn't shocked. I wanted Tyler Warren just because of the dynamic playmaking ability, but I can't really even be mad at this one. Of course, you go back and you say, "Oh well, they've taken a lineman now for X amount of years consecutively." I think it's like since 17, they've just continued to take lineman
Offensive or
offensive.
defensive lineman. Yeah.
Yeah, but this one, and it might bite me in the butt later, but this one feels okay.
Yeah, look. So first, quickly to finish the point about how the Jacksonville trade helped them, that had Mason Graham end up going 5th,
Yeah,
and I think everybody was starting to predict he might be the odd man out. Yeah, because Genty was going to go 5th, but when Genty didn't go 5th, because the Jaguars had moved up, Genty went 6th. That was an offensive lineman spot. The Jets were another potential offensive lineman spot. They ended up getting Membu. So that allowed Banks to fall. And yeah, I mean, I think what you just said is the only reason to not like this pick is their history.
yeah,
Haven't they already taken enough offensive linemen? If they just took Fuaga last year and they just took Penning 3 years ago, not to mention when they took Ruiz 2 years before that, and Eric McCoy the year before that, and Ryan Ramczyk 2 years before that,
right.
it's like, when is enough enough? Well, I've been saying this since the very beginning. Our first mock last month, I was just scrolling through and finding that. In our second mock, we took Banks, and I kind of had – we took turns kind of being final say in the war room. I just think this is a spot, and I've said this before, but when you're in the top 10, which the Saints have not been in for 17 years, this is the spot to get your quarterback, to get your left tackle, to get your defensive end. It's not the same thing as taking Trevor Penning at 19. It's certainly not the same thing as taking Peyton Turner at 28 or 29 or wherever they were that year
Right.
from a small school and projecting. That you heard Kellen Moore talk about him. Okay, Kellen Moore, why'd you like the pick? Because he played at Texas, which is basically playing pro football.
Yeah.
Because we watched 3 years of him starting 42 games against all the defensive ends that just got drafted in round one. Because he was a first team All American doing that. He was the Outland Trophy winner doing it. He was,
Yeah.
like this is just like this is where you get a tackle like this. Like if you take a tackle later, he's a projection. If you take a tackle at number 9, who was the best left tackle in the country over the past 3 years, doing it at Texas, you're feeling pretty good about that spot. Of course, it could miss, and I'm not standing on the table for Kelvin Banks. I'm not Brandon Thorne. I'm not Duke Manyweather. I'm not an expert on who's going to be a special left tackle, who's not.
Yeah.
But they took a left tackle that everyone rated in this spot that you don't have to sift through the red flags of college. He wasn't injured the whole time. He wasn't playing at a small school. He didn't just move from being a defensive end to a left tackle 2 years ago. I mean, this
Right.
is what you want. If you want a sure thing at left tackle, the other thing I love about it is I think Tali Fuaga was 3/4 the way there to being, one of the best assets on the team. I like him even better at right tackle. Now maybe you have a top 10 left tackle and a top 10 right tackle going forward. That is a
Yeah.
good way to build a long-term foundation, and that's where the Saints should be right now. Forget where they've screwed up in the past. They're building a team from last year on now, and it's going to take a few years. Right tackle, left tackle, that doesn't bother me one bit.
And that's going to get into, kind of a follow up that I had is, last year we talked about how Fuaga kind of was shielded by all the injuries and disarray that was going on with the team that
Yeah,
kept, the microscope from being on him as harshly probably kind of as it should. But now with Banks here, he moves, projected to move back to right tackle. Now he gets really his first year in the NFL with that year of experience of knowing like, what it's like to start a whole season, but
yeah.
at the position that he's been trained for, in college. So you got Fuaga at right, Banks at left. Where's
We
that leave
think
Penny?
we think they did not
We
confirm
think.
that. They
Yeah,
did not confirm that.
we think.
And
What
look, I mean, let's talk about that for a minute because there were some write-ups on Banks. Dane Brugler, one of the best in the business, puts the beast out for the Athletic. He's been a guest on our show.
yeah.
Um, he pictured Banks as a left guard. I've read other scouting reports on him that he can play left tackle. Obviously, that's what he just did at Texas. Long term, he might end up at left guard, but that is not why the Saints took him at 9. That is very similar to the conversation with Will Campbell when the Patriots took him at 4. That means they see him as a left tackle. So that's what they see him at. But yeah, I mean, one day down the road, it probably means he failed at left tackle, or that they're just so overloaded that they're putting stud left tackles at left guard. But no, I have a feeling we're going to see Fuaga back at right tackle where he played in college. But I don't think that means Fuaga failed. I think they would have been happy to let Fuaga continue to play at left tackle for them. I thought he had a good rookie year. He did not, he didn't have an outstanding, overwhelming rookie year, but I'm still as much from Fuaga as you would hope to see from a rookie who just moved from right tackle to left tackle being thrown into the fire. I see tons of room for him to grow. But yeah, I mean, if he's your right tackle and he has the experience playing right tackle in the past, I think he could be an extra special right tackle. Yeah.
And yeah, I should have brought up that point that yeah, he was thrown into the fire, and then 3 weeks into the season, his veterans they started
They're all
falling
gone.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah, they started falling. So he was out there really by himself in a space where he never really played before on the left side. So yeah, no, that's a great point. To and then even you continue to go, the quarterback changes. So now timing and different things are different. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
no,
yeah.
there's definitely a lot of leeway that he deserves from there. But
And then Petting we should talk about
yeah,
too because what does this mean for him? I mean, obviously this has got to mean he's the odd man out. He had a good year last year for Trevor Penning. It was like,
yeah.
all right, look, he's not a total disaster, and actually looked really good in some games, especially run blocking. I think he does get the chance to see. Could you be a guard? Obviously, swing tackle. Obviously, he's got experience now at left tackle and right tackle, and guys are going to miss games because they always do. And he'll be whatever James Hurst was once upon a time. Like he'll be good depth. But look, he probably won't be on the team next year unless he's signing a really cheap contract that recognizes that he's probably not a starter, unless guard is the light bulb moment and he has Andrews Pete's career, which would be a great win too.
Yeah. You never been on the show since the Mickey Loomis press conference,
Yeah,
and he talked about how they've already done it now with the 5th year option on Chris Olave, and
yeah,
then they're not doing it with Penning. Just some of your quick thoughts on that.
yeah. I mean, look, they, he would have been dragged out into the streets if they guaranteed Penning $14 million
Yeah.
next year. But look, they didn't give the 5th year option to Mark Ingram. They didn't give the 5th year option to Cesar Ruiz either. And those guys ended up signing contract extensions with the team. Um, the 5th year option is just a very expensive thing, and Trevor Penning hasn't earned a very expensive thing. It doesn't mean they're done with him. What happened last night is actually a bigger knock on Trevor Penning's future than not picking up the 5th year option.
Yep.
He's now blocked from playing his position.
Yeah. Yep. We're gonna hit a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll have more show. Keep it locked to NewOrleans.Football.
Rouse's Markets is voted best grocery store in New Orleans, best grocery store in Baton Rouge, Mississippi, Gulf Coast, Thibodaux, Homa, Hammond, Lake Charles, Mobile, year after year. Thank you for choosing us best grocery store on the Gulf Coast. Number one. Thank you.
Thank you.
The number one grocery store.
In Mississippi, Alabama,
Louisiana. 1 million customers a week can't be wrong. Welcome to Rouse's.
The NewOrleans.Football show is proudly presented by PJ's Coffee. PJ's Coffee has some of the best drinks that you can find. They have locations all over the city. They have pastries and everything else you need to get your day started. So go check them out. NewOrleans.Football is proudly sponsored by Urban South Brewery, the makers of Paradise Park Lager. I love supporting local breweries, and when looking for a refreshing, easy drinking beer, I always recommend Paradise Park. In fact, I think it might be the best game day beer out there. If you want something a little lighter, try Paradise Light. It's everything I love about Paradise Park with just 96 calories and 2.6 carbs. And if you're looking for a family-friendly place to watch the game, I'd recommend Urban South's Tap Room in the Lower Garden District. They've got 15 TVs, 30 unique beers on tap, and mouth-watering urban smash burgers. The whole family will want to make Urban South their new living room, because at Urban South, they take laid back seriously. Looking for the best insurance coverage at the lowest price? Look no further than Chabert Insurance, the Earhart Agency. They are a local independent insurance agency right here in New Orleans, specializing in home, flood, and auto insurance. At Chabert Insurance, the Earhart Agency, their dedicated team will shop every available carrier in the market, ensuring you get the most comprehensive coverage at the lowest possible price. Why settle for less when you can have the best? Trust Chabert Insurance, the Earhart Agency, to protect what matters most to you. I do. I've been a client of theirs since 2021. Call them today at 504-326-6526 or visit them online at Protected by Chabert. That's 504-326-6526. Chabert Insurance, the Earhart Agency, your local insurance experts. Hard Hide Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey is an 86 proof blend of aged wheat bourbon, American light whiskey, and fresh Ponchatoula strawberries. Blended in New Orleans, it is not for the thin-skinned. Look for it in your favorite stores, bars, and restaurants. Attention Saints fans, don't let pests and termites invade your home field. Trust the team at Red Pest Solutions to tackle those unwelcome visitors. Call the Red Man today for unbeatable pest and termite control. Score peace with no pest. Visit redpest.com, REDDPEST.com.
Welcome back for more NOF. It is now time for our next segment presented by Chabert Insurance, the Earhart Agency. Mike, we talked about quarterback. The Saints have already taken a tackle. What's left on the to-do list for the Saints in this draft?
Still everything. They're not even done with the offensive line. I mean, guard could still be a priority. I feel a little better. Like, I would take a guard. Obviously, we don't know who the left guard's going to be. It could be Dylan Radins, who they just picked up in free agency. It could be Trevor Penning, who we just talked about in the last segment. So if they don't, take a left tackle that high, if they don't end up with a guard in this draft, I'd be okay with that if you can't fill everything. But if they took a guard at 40, I'd be okay with that too. I mean, load up in the offensive line because it's one of the needs. I mean, the other ones are quarterback, obviously, which we talked about in the opening segment. I think still at 40, you can get a number one corner, or at least compete with Kool-Aid McKinstry and Alontae Taylor to be the number one corner. If you take corner in round 3 or round 4, all of a sudden, he's in the mix, but I don't think he's necessarily superseding Kool-Aid and Alante, who were other second-round picks. But, man, that is a position I like right now. If the Saints don't go quarterback, Will Johnson fell, obviously, as an injury concern.
Yeah.
But we still like Siobhan Revelle, Trey Amos, Benjamin Morrison, Azariah Thomas. I like the value at corner at pick 40. Edge rusher, which is another big one. Some guys fell there too that are still available early in round 2. Mike Green, Donovan Ezeruka from Boston College, Nick Scarton was a little bit talked about here, but and then pass catcher Mason Taylor, if you want that tight end that you missed on with Tyler Warren is still there. A couple of good big receivers. Is it Trey Harris from
Ole Miss?
Ole Miss, and Jaden Higgins from Iowa State, and then Luther Burden's not a big guy, but from Missouri, a lot of people talked about him in round 1. So those 3 must positions for the Saints all have some really intriguing value here. So if they don't go quarterback at 40, I think there's a strong chance they love their pick at 40 no matter what.
Let's go back to the offensive line. You named out Dylan Radins, and then you talked about the potential of Penning.
Yeah.
So you've completely moved Salaberry off the board. I mean,
that's a really good
point. With his injuries, he's kind of moved himself off the board.
Yeah. I mean, but, great. Go ahead and surprise me. Maybe this is the coaching staff. Maybe this is the system. Maybe this is the health.
Yeah.
That would be fantastic if he gets in that mix, no doubt about it. So, I mean, that's another good. And look, they re-signed Landon Young too, who's been a guy who's been sort of not really pushing for a starting job, but he's been a solid backup that they like. They brought back Will Clapp this year, a veteran who worked with Kellen Moore and Brendan. Why am I forgetting? Brendan Nugent, who are back on this coaching staff when they were all in with the Chargers together. So. The depth is not horrible there. When you love your 2 tackles and your center and really like your right guard, having 4 guys that could potentially fill left guard, it's not a screaming need for me right now. I like the offensive line so much better. That's one of the beauties of making a pick at a spot like that too, is you kind of elevate the whole group.
If they go with a pass catcher in Mason Taylor tonight, who, that true freshman, we've seen him kind of since he stepped on LSU's campus, be a contributor, then they get a corner maybe in that 4th-ish kind of range or later. Does that mean corner is one of the top priorities in this second wave of free agency when they're going out there and finding the veterans, maybe like a Jalen Ramsey or something like that, now that the price will be probably
not Jalen Ramsey, I don't think, but yeah, I mean, a couple other guys. But is Russell Douglas still out there? Asante Samuel still out there? I think, but yeah, maybe, especially on a 1-year deal while you're still evaluating and figuring out what Kool-Aid and Alante are. You could definitely draft a corner, but if you're drafting a corner now, I think you're drafting a corner who's probably competing with Isaac Yiadom to get on the field.
Yeah.
In year 1. If you do that later in the draft, if you do that at 40, I think that guy's going to be on the field. So it's, again, though, it's got to be about the grades. When, the beauty of having as many needs as the Saints have is you're not like, well, we don't love the corners here, but that's the one position we need most. There is no one position the Saints need most right now.
Yeah, no, it's wide open because they have a lot of needs. Let's look at the rest of the division. 2 teams went with 2 offensive playmakers. I wanted to call you so bad when they took the Ohio State wide receiver.
Yeah. Buka goes to the Buccaneers, so twice a year, unless the Saints find a nickel corner that they love, or find a way to keep Alante at the nickel, and that just becomes his specialized position for years to come. I think Ibuka will be working out of the slot a lot. He'll be learning from Mike Evans, one of the best. But yeah, look, I don't know that Ibuka is going to be a superstar. I just liked him so much for the Saints because he is that physical guy who could work inside, and that's what they need, whether it's at tight end or whether it's a big receiver to complement Shaheed and Olave. But yeah, I really liked him. So I was jealous of the Buccaneers, and I was even more jealous of the Falcons. They got, well, I take it back until they made that.
I'm about to say
Until they made that
the
trade
first
later.
thing, yeah.
Until they made that trade later and had to give up next year's first. But in the short term, holy cow, we talked about the Falcons as a team that has been loading up on offensive guys in the top 10. I told you find your cornerstones in the top 10. They used 4 top 10 picks on quarterback Michael Penix, receiver Drake London,
Bijan Robinson,
running back Bijan Robinson, and tight end
Kyle Pitts.
Kyle Pitts. Thank you for being there
No,
with
it's all
the
good.
names. I'm getting brain fog today. I've been reading too many names.
I'm about to say, man, you've been rolling, man.
And all the talk was, all right, now they got to build up that defense, and they end up with 2 edge rushers in the first round of the draft, but especially end up with Jalen Carter, who a lot of us thought was going to go in the top 10. A lot of us thought might go 8 to the Panthers, and if he didn't go 8 to the Panthers, he'd be in play for the Saints at 9. I'm quite sure they were talking about Jalen Walker when he was available to them at 9. So the Panthers and Saints both pass on him and let him fall to the rival Falcons. He could be making them regret that for years to come.
He could be. And the Panthers, they took Ted McMillan.
Yeah.
They got better at receiver. Yeah. Now they have him and Xavier Legette. So I don't know, man. I think the corner needs to kind of be a little bit more of an emphasis in the draft because 2 of the teams have gotten, like, you look at Tampa Bay. Yeah, they took him and they already had talent, but you had Chris Godwin, you re-signed him. Then you have Mike Evans, who, I mean, you might as well print out the 1,000 yards receiver right now because, it's basically set in stone that it's going to happen. And then you add him there. So there isn't
don't bring up old wounds, B.
I'm sorry, man.
Tackle him and take the penalty.
Yeah, exactly. But, now that firepower is there. Now they need defensive players, but maybe they feel like they can find them later in the draft. But they swung with the big bat early, the torpedo bat early to try to get the home run hitters, and they've gotten better on offense. So I'm very interested to see how the Saints counterpunch that because, I mean, those are some guys.
Yeah, look, Ted McMillan is one of those funny picks where you're a little hesitant if you're covering the Saints, following the Saints, fan of the Saints, in the Saints war room. Like, is this guy going to deliver on his potential enough to be worth the 9 pick? If there's some questions about how consistent he's going to be or whatever, will he reach his ceiling in the NFL? But when your rival takes him, you're nothing but scared.
Exactly.
When all you see is, oh, this guy could hurt us.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, you just see where the holes are and like, oh, well, that fills the hole right there where they could dagger right there. So, I mean, look, let's play the scenario out. Say the Panthers take not Banks. Say the Panthers take somebody that the Saints were high on, maybe like Walker.
Well, I don't know what you're about to ask, but I think everybody thought they were going to take Jalen Walker last night.
Yeah, that's the name I ended up landing on. Say the Panthers take Walker.
Yeah.
Do the Saints still go Banks or do they go with McMillan?
I think, I predicted Banks. Mm-hmm. We've been mocking Banks. Nick's been writing about offensive tackles. That's what we thought was going to happen. And we thought McMillan was going to be available. But I don't know. You never know. Maybe McMillan was a guy. I don't think anyone thought the Panthers were going to take him either. Sometimes people do keep their plans close to the vest, but I would have been predicting Banks.
Yeah, and just wrapping up this draft talk.
I just want to mention that again. I did predict Kelvin Banks.
You did. You did.
Is somebody going to come bring my trophy in here? Do you get a trophy?
I got you later, man. I'm going to turn on the sound effect later, and I got you. But, just kind of wrapping up the first round talk, who do you think is the biggest winner of the draft? Who do you think has the biggest steal so far?
Cleveland Browns. I mean, what a way to – of course, I say that for the team that could have taken Travis Hunter and didn't.
Yeah.
And if Travis Hunter becomes the next superstar that's on the commercials every week, Odell Beckham's rookie year with the Giants or whatever it is, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And the Browns passed on that, then I can't call him the biggest winner. But for a franchise that ran itself into the ground with that Deshaun Watson trade, they ended up with the 5th pick, Mason Graham, who a lot of people loved. And now they get to pick 33 and 36 tonight, and they have 2 first-rounders waiting for them next year. That's going to help them dig their way out of the franchise they've become. Now, obviously, they still need to get that quarterback. I don't know if that's tonight or if that's next year, but all of a sudden now they got 2 first-round picks to help them do it next year. I'd be like, if you're going to go that direction, and we've talked about this with the Saints over and over again, like, should you rebuild? Boy, did they push a fast forward button on the rebuild. Wouldn't you have loved to have 3 picks in the top 36 this year and 2 first-rounders waiting for you next year? You'll feel like
felt great.
You feel like you have a future.
Yeah, definitely would have felt great. We're going to hit another break, and then when we come back, we'll finish off the show. Keep it locked to NewOrleans.Football.
Total Maintenance is one of the largest locally owned home and commercial service providers in South Louisiana and serve the greater New Orleans and Baton Rouge markets. They have a membership program that gets you 2 tune-up visits for AC and heating, as well as club membership discounts of 15% on all repairs, half off of all diagnostic charges, and 3-year warranties on most repairs for membership clients. This is usually priced at the low price of $24.95 a month per system, but if you tell Total Maintenance that you found them through NOF, they'll lower the price to $20.95 per month per system for as long as you keep the membership active. Services include AC and heating service and replacement, electrical service, plumbing service, as well as generator service and installation. They are Total Maintenance. Find them at tm-ac.com or give them a call at 504-841-3300, or if you're in the Baton Rouge area, 225-480-1000. Bobby Hebert's Cajun Cannon Restaurant dropped some new apps, and they nailed every single one. The Southwest Chicken Egg Rolls, crispy, packed with flavor, and the Avocado Ranch seals the deal. Crab claws in a creamy Cajun sauce? Don't forget the French bread. And the fried chicken cracklings? Crunchy, sweet heat. You'll want your own plate. Open 7 days a week, and yep, they deliver late. Bobby Hebert's Cajun Cannon Restaurant. Delicious food, superior service. Whether you are a local New Orleanian or a fan in town for the game, get your pre- and post-game fired up at Aaron Rose. Local chaos and local love for the black and gold. Wake up and live with daily drink specials, mimosas, screwdrivers, Bloody Marys, and hot or frozen Irish coffees, all just $3 or $4 between 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Aaron Rose, half a block from Bourbon Street in the French Quarter, 811 Conti Street.
Welcome to the Queen Casino, where entertainment meets unparalleled customer service. From our days on the water to our new land experience overlooking the Mississippi River, our dedicated staff is here to ensure your visit is nothing short of exceptional. Whether you are coming or going, our well-lit parking lot and security team provide guests with red carpet treatment. Our security team keeps watch so you can focus on fun and fortune. From table to table, our attentive staff is here to serve up the ultimate experience. Join us at the Queen Casino. Your royal adventure awaits.
Welcome back for our final segment presented by Hard High Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey. Mike, kind of before the draft, in the hours just anticipating and leading up, everybody was locked on the TV just to, hear whatever chatter was going on. And Derek Carr's brother, David Carr, he, started saying some things about his brother's injury and kind of where things are. Just, I don't know. I don't see why the timing of that kind of was necessary, but what did we learn?
Well, look, I mean, it was probably the first time he came on TV since this report came out. I don't know if that's true or not, but he was doing draft analysis, and good for them. They had to ask him, what do you know about Derek? And so he shined a little bit of light. I mean, not total light. It doesn't change the reality of where the Saints are now, but it adds a little clarity to at least Derek's side of what they're dealing with, because we've been wondering, is this a mystery injury? Where did it come from? And David said that Derek really believes that it happened in the game where he broke his wrist, where he dove over the top, landed on his wrist against the Giants. And he said the reason he didn't know that he had a shoulder injury at that time is he wasn't throwing anymore. He didn't throw again. He was rehabbing the wrist, trying to come back before the season was over. It didn't. Shut it down in January, February. And then when he goes back to start throwing this offseason, he realizes his right shoulder doesn't feel right, and he gets it looked at. So that would make sense for how could this injury just show up now. It would make sense if the guy had not thrown since December, and when he started throwing, he had a shoulder injury. Now, we had heard, I don't know how much of it was speculation, how much of it was reporting that maybe this is tied to the old shoulder injury. But, I mean, any of that theoretically could be true. He said Derek believes it happened on that play, but what Derek apparently knows is the shoulder doesn't feel right now when he first started throwing. So that is a a narrative that makes sense for, wait a minute, where did this injury come from? Well, maybe it came from he didn't know about it until he first started throwing for the first time all year. So, and then he went on to say, believe me, trust me, he's working with the Saints. He's working with Mickey Loomis. They're trying to figure out the best way forward. Surgery is a possibility. Not surgery is a possibility. That's what Derek would prefer. Let me just rehab this thing. Let me get out there and make it go. But he said, I wish we had answers. We don't have answers yet. So I'm going to remain skeptical that there is still a desire from Derek Carr to maybe get out of New Orleans, since we know that he has been wanting to get out of New Orleans. He was hoping to get released. He was hoping to get traded. But this is an explanation, at least, for, okay, how could it be a mystery injury? This is how it could be a mystery injury. And, they're still talking about, they better find out if he's going to have surgery and miss the whole season, or if there is a chance he'll be back by week 1. Your whole plans depend on it, but it should not affect their draft choice whatsoever. Because no matter what, if Derek Carr comes back this year, Derek Carr shouldn't be back next year. So you're still going to need a long-term answer at quarterback.
It's on the spot, but can you put a percentage on the possibility of him coming back?
No, but I mean, it was close to 0 before. Mm-hmm. And if truly, Derek, if the clarity they've been waiting for is Derek calling the Saints next week and saying, all right, I met with the third doctor, and this is now 2 guys in a row telling me they think I can rehab it and be back throwing by veteran minicamp and fully healthy by the start of training camp, maybe there now is a percentage chance that he's still the Saints quarterback this year, whereas I thought it was close to 0 before. But I'm not going to let these comments completely make me think, oh, okay, it was much ado about nothing, because we're still talking about a quarterback who, A, wanted to be released or traded, and B, did not show up for the start of the offseason program, in addition to all the other things people have been pointing to. Why wasn't he around for this and that? I mean, last year at this time, him and DeMario Davis were doing that huge community event. Yeah. He was like all in. And even if you're not sure if you're having shoulder surgery, the Derek Carr that we've gotten over the last couple of years would have been a guy who would have shown up for the start of the offseason program, to be in the meetings, to be sitting front row center while Kellen Moore is introducing him to the team. Derek Carr was away for that. That still means something, I think.
No, yeah, for sure. And then kind of on top of that, I think just this has gotten too much noise, man. Too much noise in between. Yeah.
And then cleanness, for clarity,
right. Because even you wrote about it, just kind of recapping it. But even in the pre-draft press conference with Mickey Loomis, that was the first. Of course, that was the first question that was asked, and then it was the second, third, fourth, and fifth. And he just
Loomis didn't want that to be the case. He's like, we want to talk about the draft today. There is nothing going on with this team that matters until they figure out what's going on with their starting quarterback. You're right. Like that's a huge distraction. So I would not want the whole offseason selfishly, but I would think the Saints wouldn't want the whole offseason.
No.
Hey, is it possible Derek comes back in September? Hey, is it possible Derek comes back in October? Hey, is it possible Derek comes back in November? Right. You don't want that hanging over you all year long.
No, not, and especially not with a first-year head coach, man. You keep on rolling him out there. Kellen, and then he's just going to smile and say the same thing, and then it's just a lot, man. That song and dance needs to be over with. That'll do it for this edition of NewOrleans.Football. We appreciate you all for tuning in this morning. Hey, man, we're coming back on the stream later today, so make sure that you're locked in for your draft coverage, and make sure you're locked in because Mike and John, they're going to be ready with the article. So if you want to know who the Saints are,
I'm going to pick. Wait, hold on. I'm undefeated. We got to get John's undefeated too. John picked Kelvin Banks too. And again, I want to give Nick credit. He went second level. He picked Connerly because he thought Banks was going to be gone. But Nick's been all over this left tackle thing. Scroll through the feed, and you'll see why it makes sense for the Saints to take an offensive tackle. Those were the 2 articles he had pre-written, Banks and Connerly. So a lot of patting ourselves on the back. And I think if it's shut tonight, then we'll be intolerable.
There you go. Make sure you're locked in. Catch you next time.